Just preach as long as you want. I don't think so. Good to see everybody, and this isn't the way. Am I doing something wrong?
No, you're good.
Okay. It's just, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. I will say this. It's not the way we wanted to be here. Late. This is like a recurring nightmare of mine, a dream. Maybe it is. Josh, right? For a preacher, I don't dream much, but when I do, I am late for an appointment, and I don't have my notes. I don't know what I'm going to preach. So, my nightmare came true, but it wasn't our fault. We were about 7 minutes away on Hobbs Island, and we were going to be early. It was probably 6:30 when we ran into that. We were the first car there. Basically, there were two more on the other side stopped, but we need to pray for that young man that was involved with that and the family. I grew up at East Huntsville, and I attended here at Farley, and I have been wondering this for some time. I attended here in around 91, 92. Does anybody know who the preacher was? 91, 92, 93 area. Does anybody know? If you don't, you can tell me later. But my dad was a song leader at East Huntsville, one of the song leaders, and they did not have a song leader here. And so somebody knew him, and they asked him to come lead singing. And so we attended here probably 6 months to a year with my dad leading singing. And anyway, really enjoyed it. But glad to be here for your summer series. Your theme is a lasting legacy, the legacy of your favorite Bible character. And someone once defined a legacy as passing on things of lasting value to those who will live after us. That's what a legacy is. And so I picked the person of James, the brother of Jesus, for my topic tonight. James has truly passed down some things of lasting value in the book that he wrote in the New Testament. The book of James is my favorite book of the Bible, I would imagine. And the reason that it is because when I read James, all of it applies. Every bit of James applies to my life. James is practical Christianity. If you want to learn how to endure trials, to be patient during the trying times of life, read the book of James. If you want to learn about good works and about prayer and about putting God first, and all of that is found in the life of James, and he recorded that in his book that is in our New Testament. And you can read the book of James, the average person, about 15 to 20 minutes it takes to read the entire book of James. But if we could take those 5 chapters, that 15 to 20 minute reading, if we could apply that to our lives, it would transform us, it would change us, it would change our thinking, it would help our Christian walk. James was the brother of Jesus, and I want you to think about this idea of being the brother of Jesus. For 30 years, I would imagine, James sat at the same table with the Lord. Every day of the week except the Sabbath, James and Jesus and maybe some of the other brothers would go into their father's workshop and they would work with their hands. Can you imagine being the brother, the physical brother of Jesus, of the Son of God? Maybe there was some animosity as there are with brothers. You know, I'm a younger brother, and my job in this world is to pester my older brother. And so or at least it used to be. It still is to some degree. But can you imagine that maybe the younger brother, James, maybe he pestered the older brother, Jesus? I don't know. But this may have been some of the reason that James and the other brothers did not believe that Jesus was the Christ. In John 7 and verse 5, the Bible says, "For even his brothers did not believe in him." And so James grew up with the Lord. He grew up with Jesus. He sat at the table with Jesus. He was a carpenter, I would imagine, with Jesus. But James and the other brothers the other siblings did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah. But there was one event that took place in the life of James that changed the way that he thought about Jesus, changed the way he looked at Jesus. James did not believe in Jesus, that Jesus was the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, when he was a young boy. He didn't believe at the wedding feast. He did not believe even at the cross. James did not believe that Jesus was the Savior of the world. But the one event that changed the life of James was the resurrection of his brother, the resurrection of Jesus. That's when something went off in his heart and his mind, and he said, "Now I believe in the one they call Jesus. He is the Messiah. He is the Christ." In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Jesus was seen by Peter, by the 12, then by 500 at once, and after that he was seen by James, his brother. When Jesus appeared to those in the upper room in Acts chapter 1 and verse 14, James was there. When Peter was released from prison and he told those at the prayer meeting to go tell James, Acts chapter 12 and verse 17, Peter went on to say that James was one of the pillars in the Lord's church, Galatians 2 and verse 9. And from coming to not believing at all that your brother, that Jesus was the Messiah, to seeing the resurrected Christ, James then went on to become a great leader in the Lord's church. And James served his brother for 30 years after the death of Jesus. James was killed in AD 62 when the high priest had him thrown off the temple and then beaten with clubs. And church history or historians say that when James was dying, that he looked at the ones beating him, and just like his brother on the cross, James said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." This small book, written by the brother of our Lord, what a legacy it is. And James has left us a legacy in every chapter. And I want us to look, and I'm sorry that I'm late because I was going to be pushing our time frame anyway, but I will reduce it down. But I want us to look at every chapter in the book of James. There's 5 chapters, and we're going to look at the legacy that James left us in every chapter in his book. Turn to James chapter 1. James chapter 1. I have 5 points, and point number 1 is this. The first thing that we can learn from the life of James, the first legacy that he has left the world is this: be patient in your trials. Be patient in your trials. Look at James chapter 1 and verse 2. "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." And if you drop down to verse 12, "Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him." We understand James is writing to the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. And he is telling them that they will and that they are enduring various trials. He doesn't say if they will, he says when they will. And we have to understand the legacy that James left us is that he is telling us as well that trials are coming. You can count on it. And you may be sitting here tonight, or you may be saying, well, I've got trials in my life right now. And I'm sure in a crowd like this, we could go around the room and say, what trial are you dealing with? And every single one of us is dealing with some form, some various trial. And if you're not, I'm going to tell you it's coming. You say, well, he's a good news preacher, wow. Come build us up, come encourage us. Well, what I'm telling you is, if you're not going through a struggle right now, believe me, it is coming. It is coming. Jesus said in John 16, verse 33, these things I've spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you'll have tribulation. Be of good cheer, I've overcome the world. Acts chapter 14 and verse 22, Paul says, we must through many tribulations enter the kingdom of God. The Christian life, and I wish we could go around the room to some of these older Christians that I see here tonight, and I wish they could tell me their experience as they have journeyed through their Christian life. And I guarantee you that everybody, every seasoned member of the Lord's church would say, Christianity is not easy. Christianity is not easy. Look at the godly men in the Bible and also women. But notice Job 14 and verse 1, man who is born of woman was few days and full of trouble. You ever feel like that in your life? Abraham was told to kill his son Isaac in Genesis chapter 22. Jeremiah was called the weeping prophet. John the Baptist was beheaded. Paul was beaten and shipwrecked, put into prison, left for dead. All the apostles died at the hands of angry men except for the apostle John. Christianity, we understand, is not for the weak. You have to be strong in order to be a Christian. These Christians in the first century were experiencing persecution. They were scattered because non-believers were persecuting them. Now, that's not happening that I know of in Huntsville, Alabama. It's happening in some parts of the world, but it's not necessarily happening here. And so when James tells us, hey, you're going to endure persecution, our persecution comes in different forms. And here's how it comes. And don't raise your hand, don't say that's me, but you know within yourself. Here's persecution, the loss of a job. How am I going to pay the bills? That's a trial. That's a trial. A divorce. Nobody wants to divorce. It breaks up a family. That's a trial. That's a tribulation. Trouble with your children. And I'm not talking about small children. Maybe I am. I'm talking about grown children. Trouble with your grown children. That's a trial that some people have to endure. Sickness, cancer, other diseases. That's a trial that so many people are having to go through. What about the death of a family member? Boy, what a trial, what a tribulation that is. Loneliness. I'm going to tell you, loneliness is hard to deal with. And maybe some of you here are dealing with the trial, the tribulation of loneliness and depression. It leads to depression. When trials come, what do? What does James say? What does James tell us? He tells us his legacy is, you count it all joy. You count it all joy. This doesn't mean that we never get mad or that we walk around always with a smile on our face, but what this means is that we have a peace that passes all understanding, Philippians 4 and verse 6. When trials come, I count it all joy because I have a hope that the world cannot understand, Colossians 1 and verse 27. That means I can have joy and rejoice even in my tribulations, James 1 and verse 12. And we have this peace and we have this hope and we have this joy because we know that God is by our side. How people outside these doors and outside these walls deal with tribulations and trials, I don't know. I have no idea. But you know how I deal with trials? You know how you deal with trials? Just the way James told us to. Be patient. God's working on you, for you, and in you, and God is beside you in your trials. There's a young man and a young woman in the prime of their lives. About the age of 35, they were both working, raising a family, doing a real good job at their careers and in life. The husband worked in the military. The wife worked at a law firm. And one day, the wife started to develop some headaches. She went to the doctor, and he said she had a disease, which she was going to lose her vision. He said, I can do surgery, and I can help you, but you're still going to have total, complete vision loss when I get finished. Well, the day came for the surgery, and she came home. The surgery was a success, helped her headaches. She was totally, completely blind forever. Well, several days went by and several weeks went by, and the wife would just sit in the house, not moving, not doing anything. She was so depressed. The husband noticed this, and he wanted to help, and finally he said to his wife, I think it's time for you to get back to work. She said, there's no way. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll drive you to work. I'll drive you to the office building, and I'll hold your hand as we walk up the stairs, and I'll come back in the afternoon, and I'll get you, and you need to get out. You got to go to work. She said, okay, I don't want to, but I think you're right. So they started doing that. Several weeks went by. They're doing this routine, and the husband says to his wife, he says, you know what? He said, you can do it by yourself. She said, no, I can't. He said, it's time. He said, I can't hold your hand forever. He said, you go down to the bus stop. He said, I'll drop you at the bus stop. You get on the bus. You ride to downtown to your work. You get off, and you go in. He said, I know you can do it. She said, okay. If you think I can, I'll do it. And so they started this routine. He would drive her a little piece. She would get on the bus with her white cane. She would get off of the bus in the morning. She would go up to her office building. She would come and get on the bus in the afternoons. And it wasn't long, maybe a week or two, that the bus driver stopped her one morning as she got off the bus. And he said, I envy you. And she said, you envy me? He said, yeah, I envy you. And she said, why do you envy me? She said, I'm blind. She said, I'll never be able to see. She said, why do you envy me? He said, every day when you get off my bus, there's a man standing on the street corner. He said, he's in some branch of the military, and he watches you get off my bus, and he watches you walk into work. And when you walk by him, he stands and he salutes you. And then every afternoon, he's back on that same street corner. And he watches you get on the bus. He said, I envy you because I wish I had somebody to watch over me like that. When we're going through trials in life, I want you to understand, Jesus is watching over our lives. I can't see him. I can't feel him, just like this lady, but I know he's there. And he is watching over us. He is protecting us. Psalm 121, 7 and 8, the Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forever. One of the greatest legacies that James, the brother of Jesus, left this world is to tell us to be patient in our trials. The Lord is working on us. He's working in us, and He's working beside us. Point number 2. Did you say we're going to 8:30? I'm kidding. That was a joke. I'll stop it at 8. We may not get through the whole book of James. All right, point number 2. Patient in our trials. Point number 1 from chapter 1. Point number 2, practice good works. What a legacy. What a legacy. Practice good works. Notice James chapter 2, 18 through 26 was the reading. Let's start in 18. We may not go all the way, but someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. Go to verse 26. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. James tells us, and we understand that James didn't do much in the first 30 years of his life because he didn't believe in the Messiah. He didn't believe Jesus was the Christ. But after the resurrection, boy, James started working for the Lord. And he showed people his faith by the works that he did, the works that were in his life. And James is encouraging his readers. He's encouraging us as Christians that we need to go out and we need to practice good works. Practice good works. Add works to our faith. Because if we do not have works, if we do not have action to go along with our faith, then our faith is worth absolutely nothing. I can stand up and you can stand up and we can stand up in church, or we can go out into our workplace, and I can say I'm a Christian all day long. I can say how much I love God. I can say how much faith I have. I can tell people how much I pray. But if you never show it in your life by the works that you do, you're really not a Christian. You're really not a Christian. My wife is here with me, Rachel, and if I were to tell her every day that I love her, which I do, by the way, I tell her every day, I love you. But I never had a real conversation with her. I never gave her a hug. I never took the trash out. I never mowed the yard. My words say I love you, but my actions say not really. Not really. Words are nothing if they're not backed up by works. We have to, and this is the legacy James left us, practice good works. 1 John 3, 17 and 18, whoever has the world's goods and sees his brother in need shuts up his heart from him. How does the love of God abide in him? My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. What John is saying is exactly what James is saying. Add works to your faith. Add works to your faith. And I know that you all are doing good works, but maybe you're here tonight, maybe you say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Well, I heard of one lady that she would take the shut-in list that was in the bulletin, and she would take 5 or 6 copies of the bulletin every Sunday, and she would take the bulletin to the shut-in people, and they appreciated it. That's something we can do. That's adding works to our faith. I heard of one older Christian lady. She was put in a nursing home. And you can imagine she didn't want to be there. And she said, I wonder what the Lord has for me to do here. And so she started knitting slippers for every resident in that home. We can do so many things for the Lord. So many things for the Lord. And we need to be adding works to our faith. Adding works to our faith. And we also need to understand this. We need to understand that everybody is somebody. Everybody is somebody. I want to tell you another story. I really want to squeeze this one in, and we'll move a little bit quicker. We got about 10 minutes. Last year, about this time, I had a phone call. It was a Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, and a man from Gunnersville, I live in Grant, a man from Gunnersville called me. I didn't know who he was. He said, somebody gave me your phone number. I'm down here at the pharmacy, and I'm in need. I need clothes. I need food. I need a shower. He said, my family's kicked me out of the house. My mother's kicked me out of the house, and it was hot during the summer. And so I said, okay, I was curious, how'd you get my phone number, But I said, well, it doesn't matter. I said, I'm going to come and I'm going to help you. My wife said, you need to take a friend with you. So I took a friend of mine, which attends at Grant. His name is Jordan. And I called Jordan, fairly new convert in the last 3 to 5 years. And I thought this would be good for Jordan, to see how you go out and you do good works and you serve other people. And I thought Jordan's going to learn, maybe learn from this. So I called Jordan. He said, come by and get me. He said, I just have some old rags on or whatever. I said, it don't matter. I said, let's go. We met the guy in Gunnersville. Sure enough, he needed help. He was hungry. He was stinky. Man, let me tell you, he was stinky. And he needed a bath. And so Rachel had already gathered up a few food items. And I said, well, here's you some food. He said, hey, can you put me up in a hotel for the night? And I said, well, okay, I guess I can. So he got in my truck. Jordan was in the back seat. We rode through Jack's, and he got him something to eat. And I went to the motel, and I bought him a room for the night. And I said, okay. I said, well, I hope you come see us at church, but hey, it's getting late. We need to get on home. And I thought, hey, I've done a good deed. I've done good works here, And he was standing in the room, and he said, I've got to wash my clothes. He said, how can I wash my clothes? He said, the washing machine is way down there. He said, how am I going to wash my clothes? And I said, man, I don't know. I don't know. I said, maybe put a towel around you, wash them in the sink. I was ready to go home. And he said, well, I don't know how to, my shirt's real stinky. And about that time, Jordan, the new convert, the friend that I was going to be teaching about good works, he takes his shirt off. And he says, here, you want my shirt? And the man looked at him, yes. And I turned and looked at Jordan. You ever heard the expression, he'd give you the shirt off his back? That's exactly what he did. And then he started walking toward my truck, and I said, well, he's embarrassed because he didn't have a shirt on. So I clicked my truck to unlock it, and I told the man, I thought, okay, hey, we've got to go. Jordan comes back. He says, you want my shoes? Yes. Man, I need a good pair of shoes. I do. I look at Jordan. I can't believe what's happening. And then the man says, I've got new shirt, I've got new shoes. Jordan said, I can't give you my pants. He said, I got to keep them on. But here was Jordan, a new convert. He was showing the love of Christ by good works. By good works. Everybody is somebody. Everybody is somebody. Galatians 5:13, for you are called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. James says it like this, I will show you my faith by my works. And I want to tell you, Jordan that night, he showed his faith to that man, and he showed his faith to me. I left there humbled, thinking I was going to teach him, and he taught me. Point number 3 is this. Look at chapter 3. The power of the tongue. The power of the tongue. My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment. That's verse 1. For we all stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle the whole body. Indeed, we put bits in horses' mouths that they may obey us, and we turn their whole body. Look also at ships, although they are so large, are driven by fierce winds. They are turned by a very small rudder wherever the pilot desires. Even so, the tongue is a little member and boasts great things. See how great a forest a little fire kindles. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire by hell. James leaves us a legacy in chapter 3, and his legacy is remember the power of the tongue. Remember that you have power in your words. And James says, do your best to control what you say. Because when you control that little member, your tongue, then you have control of the entire body. That's amazing. When you control your tongue, you're in control of your entire body. Proverbs 18 and verse 21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. I have said many times before, and I'll say it again, some people will miss heaven by 4 inches. You ever heard that? Some people will miss heaven by 4 inches. That is the average length of a human tongue. And I want to tell you, our words will keep us out of heaven, or can keep us out of heaven. What we say matters. Our speech matters. It shows if I'm a Christian or a non-Christian, if I'm a godly person or ungodly person. My words tell people if I'm kind or if I'm compassionate or if I'm mean and mean-spirited. Our words tell others who we are. Proverbs 13 and verse 3, he who guards his mouth preserves his life, but he who opens wide his lips shall have destruction. You know what that verse means? In the nicest way I know how to say it, sometimes we need to keep our mouths shut. We need to keep our mouths shut. And if you feel like you're about to say something that you should not say, put your hand over your lips and understand the power of the tongue. Point number 4 comes from chapter 4. The legacy that James has left us. He tells us, be prepared for tomorrow. Look at verse 13 of chapter 4. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow, we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Every time I read this verse, I think of Psalm 90 and verse 10. The days of our lives are 70 years. If by reason of strength there are 80 years, yet their boast is only labor and sorrow. For it is soon cut off and we fly away. Won't be long. Won't be long. And we need to be prepared. Every time I think of that verse, Psalm 90 and verse 10, you ever watch the Beverly Hillbillies? They were flying out to Beverly Hills, and they had never seen a plane. They thought, I guess, they were getting on a big bus. But the plane started going down the runway, picking up speed, and Granny looked out the window and she said, if somebody don't tell this driver to slow down, we're fixing to take to the air, you know? You know what? This life's not slowing down. We're fixing to take to the air. All of us. All of us. And I know some people that'll say, well, tomorrow I'm going to get my prayer life. I'm going to get it straight. I'm going to start praying. Tomorrow I'm going to start reading and studying. I'm going to get on a study plan. I'm going to do that tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to go out and do good works. Tomorrow I'm going to start loving the Lord. I'm going to start loving the church. I'm going to start loving like I should. Tomorrow I'm going to ask the Lord for forgiveness. I knew a man, it's a true story, down in Opelika, Alabama. He sat on the back pew every Sunday, and he would, as you have heard preachers say, he would grip the back of the pew in front of him at the invitation song. And one day the preacher that I knew well walked out and said, I'm glad you're here. And that man said, you almost got me today, preacher. You almost got me today. And he walked out the door, and he got in his pickup truck, and the scene that we just saw tonight happened. Somebody hit him, dead on the scene. You almost got me. I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to get my life right. But tonight I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive home. No. The legacy of James says, you do it now. You be prepared for tomorrow, and the time to prepare is now. And then number 5, look at chapter 5. The power of prayer. James' legacy, and I think this may be his biggest legacy. Start in verse 13. Is any among you suffered? Let him pray. Is any cheerful? Let him sing psalms. Is anyone among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the church and let him pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith will save the sick. The Lord will raise him up, and if he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. Confess your trespasses one another. Pray for one another, that you may be healed. The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. James, the legend, this is not found in the Bible, but historians say this, that James was such a spiritual man, he put so much emphasis on prayer that his nickname was Camel Knees. Camel Knees. They were calloused over because James spent so much time on his knees praying to God in heaven. And I want to tell you, I believe in the power of prayer. And I know you believe in the power of prayer as well. And we need to be, it doesn't matter if you're on your knees, if you're standing up, sitting at your kitchen table, driving down the road, we need to be men and women, brothers and sisters that believe in the power of prayer. The book of James is practical Christianity, and he left us this legacy. Be patient in your trials, practice good works, remember the power of the tongue, prepare for tomorrow, and remember the power that we have in prayer. Our time is up. I don't extend the invitation to. Well, I'll say this. We're not going to have an invitation song, right?